And we are recording. That does smell good. On Monday, December 4th, 2023 at 10:26 a.m. Eastern Time with Dr. Stoli and Archimedes and myself. And we've pushed Toskit before, which is, the little case for if you shit yourself. And we did go into about a 2 hour long explanation, Stoli, myself, and Don the Pleb, about how it's
I want to
also
say it was more like four, but
no, but I mean specifically about how this could be used as an assassination kit. Um,
that too.
oh, speaking of which, I'll save that story for a second. And the first, not to shit on the shitty, but the first kind of actual sponsor of this show, Fox and Sons Coffee. The link to that is in the description, guys. If you want to get fucking jacked up, if you want to feel like your balls are vibrating like the goddamn center of a hydrogen bomb right before we glass Gaza, Fox and Sons Coffee. Now, I might have just lost that advertiser, and this is live, so I can't take that back. But in the meantime, guys, that's in the description. And as these guys just pointed out brilliantly, drink a lot of coffee real quick. You're probably gonna fucking shit yourself. Toskit.com. And I don't have anything
Toskit.com.
to show right now,
Toskit.com.
but also the wellness company where Dr. McCullough works. You guys want your multivitamins? You guys want to go get some quercetin and turmeric and zinc to get the spike proteins out of your blood? Wellness company. What else do we have? I think it's just those right now. But I was saying Toskit. So there's another company called Dude Wipes, which I guess is a massive company, and it's kind of the same thing. And I emailed them, and I got an automated response, and then I was like, no, I actually I've worked with a shit yourself company
I'm a
before.
professional pooper. All right.
I'm like, I've done this. And he was, and then I got, instead of a robot, I finally got a person, because I got the robot response, and it was like that. It was like, thanks for emailing us, dude. And I was like, oh, fuck you. And then but then I was like, hey, I've actually worked with this before. And they're like, oh, cool. Send along any ad you've done. The only ad I have is me, Stoli, and Don the Pleb talking for 3 hours about how you could probably use this to kill your opponents. I haven't heard back from them. So,
I mean, they're missing out, honestly. I mean,
they are
normally people just do ad spots for fucking 10, 20, 30 seconds. You guys did 3 hours on that shit. So
above and beyond. Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Hey, Archimedes, for everybody, introduce yourself. And everybody knows Stoli, and I hope they know me.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys. I go by Archimedes. My name's Tamid. I am an American. I'm from Bangladesh originally. Um, yeah, man. And I've been going on Wyatt's podcast for some time, the DPA open mic. You guys might know it if you've seen Wyatt's shows with Tommy. And yeah, man, here to talk about India, Pakistan, geopolitics, and get into it.
I need to bring in Tommy here because let's see. I believe these are the books that I haven't read yet, but I have Tommy to thank for
There we go.
getting these on my list here, and he's already been through some of this material, so he can help
Actually, I
us
have
out
this one
here.
right here.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, you can see it. There you go.
Paper brick gang.
Yeah.
So yeah,
hell
Tommy's here to help us get a perspective here on Bharat, India rising in a multipolar world order, and also a bit of the rise of the Hindu nationalism that we're seeing, because there's been this concerted effort by the Soros globalist types to go ahead and target Hindus as the new straight white males. And as I was saying on the open mic the other night, you end up with these Soros woke commissars in Silicon Valley calling in some, Indian atheist that, not even has a dog in the religious fight. They get brought into HR office and told that they have Brahmin privilege. And now there's Hindu nationalists in California going, hey, should we go back to India and do something about this? And so we're seeing a lot of that now, as well as the fact privilege. That, well, yeah, Brahmin privilege, it's a thing. And so I think we should probably start on the cultural aspects of that before we move into you have a really good just geography and geopolitical take to back that up. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, and real quick, still, you're gonna have to refer to him as Archimedes. Tommy and Tommy are way too similar, and I'm gonna you're gonna refer to me, and I'm gonna be like, bro, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And I'm posting the live link. Archimedes, take it away.
Cool. Yeah. Well, Tommy is actually my Starbucks name, so because I do not don't enjoy explaining my name and spelling it out to a fucking $7.25 an hour Starbucks employee. Yeah. Well, 15 now. I don't know.
But no, it's so they don't do the whole see something, say something. Be like, dude, I'm not fucking that. I'm not that brown. I'm this brown.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, when it comes to the cultural side of things, right? the global left, like you said, the George Soros types, right? They put everybody in this hierarchy of oppressed versus oppressor, right? And of course, people like Tommy, who are true Aryan, Giga Chads, are at the very top of that. But somehow, the Indian nationalist, the Hindu, has also been elevated to being like the second tier of that instead of being on the bottom. I mean, I personally, I don't like the idea of even having that sort of hierarchy of oppression. I think it's gay. But if you're going to have that, why do you have people who are of a global minority, who are part of the global South, who are coming from extreme poverty imposed by, over a century and a half of colonialism and imperialism, and yet these people, now that they're trying to regain their national sovereignty and their national identity, and I guess civilizational uh, dignity, and they're being painted as right-wing extremists, right? They're being painted as these sort of oppressors. And then the Muslims that are in India, that are a minority of India, are now being painted as the oppressor class, right? Or as the oppressed class, as opposed to the Hindu oppressor class, which is, I think it's a very strange sort of inversion of leftist dogma. And and like you mentioned, Stoli, with the books by J. Deepak, he goes really in depth on this idea, which is that he talks about how India has basically suffered from two different layers of coloniality, right? If you think about the way that the Europeans imperialists kind of conquered the world in the period from 1700 to 1900, let's say, um, there was Deepak wants to kind of talk about not just that layer of imperial ideology that's on the Indians, but a previous colonialism that happened from the Muslims that took over India, which is something that's not really thought about very much in the West, I would say, right? People aren't really aware that from the period of about 1100 to 1500, starting with the invasions of Mahmud of Ghazni, going on to the Delhi Sultanate, and then into the Guru dynasty was before that, then the Delhi Sultanate, and then the Mughal Empire. Those various series of invasions, I mean, brutal invasions by the Muslims, Central Asian, Persianized, Turkic Muslims that came in from what is now Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, from Iran, and they conquered India, right? And they imposed, an imperial structure where the Muslims were at the top and the Hindus were the lower class, right? Of course, not all Hindus were lower class, but that was the abiding structure in most of India, at least in the north and most of India. I mean, except for the south, which never was conquered by the Muslims, for several hundred years. And then the British came in after that system was finally breaking down, and the Hindus were beginning to retake control of India with the Maratha Confederacy. And that's the moment that the British came in and imposed their will on India. And then there was a second layer of imperialism where now both the Muslims and the Hindus were second-class citizens to the British. And now that the India is once again in native hands, in Hindu hands, Hindu control, 85% of India is Hindu, but not 85% of greater India, that is India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. There's still a whole lot of Muslims there. And at this point, now that the Hindus are reasserting their sort of nationality and their civilizational ethos on that land, which is their native land, and that's their native civilizational ethos, they're being looked at by the globalists as a threat, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
trying.
and we're one of the things that we're seeing too is on the Bangladesh front. The woke globalist kind of left is terrified of how close Bangladesh and India are actually working together, and so we've seen a lot of efforts from them to go in there and try to subvert fortify their elections, so to speak, try to bring in the old divide and conquer there. And I want to say I really noticed a trend of India kind of getting in lockstep to push back. I want to say probably just over a year ago now is when I really started to see a lot of the talking heads and a lot of the smart dudes from India get in line, and they started saying Soros a lot. They started bringing up Disinfo Labs reports. They started talking a lot about how Soros and the Democrats in the U.S. are aligned with PAC ISI. And I know you, Tommy, you've had George Webb on, who he was the rock star doing deep dives on Imran Awan and Debbie Weiserman Schultz back in the day. And also he was doing a lot of the money laundering through car dealerships. That's why a lot of times when I talk about money laundering, I just say Packy car dealer, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. And so there's always been this kind of alliance there. And as about a year ago, when we really started seeing all these I want to say foreign policy figures. The current foreign, I'm not going to butcher the foreign minister's name, Jay Shankar, I believe the name is something like around that line. You know, these guys were really coming out, and guys that are historically apolitical when it comes to domestic politics started backing Modi in ways that our intelligence community would never even back Trump. A lot of these guys were starting to join the BJP movement with kind of two aims. A, that, you know, they don't want to go too far from, you know, a secular state. You know, they don't want things to get out of control, so they're trying to tamp it down and keep it liberal. And that's the, you know, the funny thing about, you know, listening to Indians get painted as far right. I've yet to meet a far right Indian. Okay, most of the people that I talk to from these communities and everything, they are liberal in the oldest sense of the word. Okay, and so like it's a very big joke to me to hear them painted as these kinds of Nazis now. But you know, we've seen this whole pushback from the Indian intelligence community that, you know, I would say culminated in when the foreign minister sat before the Council on Foreign Relations and essentially told the West to go fuck off in very polite diplomatic terms, while also saying no comment when questioned about possibly bumping off a Khalistani guy in Canada. So we've really seen this offensive kind of go off from the Indian side, pushing back on that. And it's also just really impressive to see how well they're holding together. Like, I wish our Republicans and our intelligence community could do anything like this. I wish that they, you know, they had any sense of self-security like the Indians seem to have, because it's quite impressive watching them all kind of get in lockstep. And they had, I was telling Tommy, he can probably trace back when I said this, I was like, man, all these Indians are talking about Soros all of a sudden. We need to hook them up with Rumble, because they're all going to get shadow banned.
Yes. Oh, 1,000%. No, you're all going to get ice. When did it necessarily start? Because I know literally next to nothing, and as we all discussed beforehand, we are all retarded, and I think I am the most retarded. Is when did this happen? Because the very little things I can think about is, and this is truly nothing, is that border skirmish between India and China a couple years ago.
Oh,
and doesn't India have, like, doesn't they have, I mean, it's kind of odd because they're BRICS, but aren't they kind of paired with us militarily, or we've done some exercises? The second is didn't they tell like Pfizer to go fuck off, and they did the whole hydroxychloroquine, correct? Because that was a huge thing, that they had one state that was larger than the United States, and they had like no COVID cases using just they
told Bill Gates to fuck off too. And also worth keeping in mind on the COVID thing, the first labs that were sounding the alarm on fern cleavage sites was out of India, if I recall.
So again,
they were also leading the charge there.
I don't know if I'm just, you know, if I'm just seeing it under every rock because I've done 100 trillion of these episodes, but my first thing does go to is like, that is the blinking red light of like India, like they didn't take the fake and gay like that. It was like, no, we have this shit on the shelves that work, and they're like, but the new, and they're like, no, fuck off.
So one of
they made their own vaccine, and they exported it to quite a lot of countries too.
Yeah, so that's the only thing I can think of, and and you would think in terms of hierarchies, right? You think they would like that, right? Wouldn't they try to like resurrect some caste system shit? Or like
most of that is basically propaganda, basically meant to paint them as Nazis.
I know it's old. I mean,
the caste thing gets overplayed, because that's essentially if you look at SB 403 out of California, and I believe I believe it was Sri Iyer that was talking about this the most from P Gurus. I believe 12 states have been considering legislation like this, but the entire way that they target Hindus is with caste discrimination laws. So the entire idea is they have Brahmin privilege, so we're going to have caste discrimination laws, and that's the avenue of how they're painted as the straight white males.
Our communities, can you start suing for reparations of like past incarnations?
I wish, man. I wish.
Fucking, we need to pull in karma reparations.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I, you know, even if I could get it, it's why I don't want to, even though I have a shitload of student loans, I don't want.
I'd represent you.
No, fuck that, man. I don't want reparations.
I'm a biology major, and I would probably just get us both in jail, but I'll represent you.
Yeah.
But so is that at all plausible? Has anything? When did it initially start? I mean, when did India first kind of said fuck off in like 2021, 2022?
So I would say you got to look at when the BJP took power, which I think was 2014 or 2016, if I recall correctly. That's I think when these things started.
Gotcha.
Now the BJP stands for the Bharatiya Janata Party, which basically means, right, it's a unified, it uses the term Bharat, right, which I think we should kind of cover before we get further into this, because everyone knows the word India, right? And India comes from the river Sindh, or which is the river that runs through the length of Pakistan from northeast to southwest. That river is the sort of the border of India, right? That from the Persian perspective, if you look at the Indian subcontinent, you see the lands that are beyond the Sindh River, right? Beyond the Indus River is another name for it. It's the same thing. And the Hindus are the people that are living beyond the Indus River. Uh, and Hinduism is the religion of the people living beyond the Indus River, and India is the region that is beyond the Indus River. That's not the native name for India. The native name is Bharat, and that's quite normal. You have Deutschland versus Germany, you have Zhongguo versus China, right? Nippon versus Japan. Um, but it's kind of important to realize that the BJP, the right-wing party, calls themselves the Bharatiya Janata Party, whereas the left-wing party, the Indian National Congress, calls themselves the Indian National Congress. The Indian National Congress is, of course, the party of Gandhi and Nehru, who, these days a lot of revision has been happening on their legacies, those two people. That it turns out that they were kind of more connected with the British Empire than it seemed, even though those two were sort of Nehru, if you don't know, was the first prime minister of India, and Gandhi was, of course, the big freedom fighter. Well, not really fighter, freedom starver. He starved himself, I guess. And everybody looks at those two people as being representative of the foundation of India. But if those two people themselves were compromised, and if the Indian National Congress from the start was a product of the British, it kind of goes to tell you that it kind of explains why India hasn't been able to be independent and develop properly for the entire time that the INC has been the dominant party in Indian politics, which is pretty much from 1947 all the way up to 2014 when the BJP took over. Not entirely. There were periods where I think the BJP had some power in some other parties, but the INC was the biggest party by far. And they were leftists, they were socialists, right? They were aligned with the Soviet Union. Even today, of course, India is pretty well aligned with Russia. We can get into that a little later. But this sort of revival in Indian nationalism, I think, started with the BJP rising up, and Modi, of course, is the big figure that he's the one who's incredibly charismatic. You listen to that guy talk. I mean, listen to him talk in Hindi. He has kind of a weird voice in English. He sounds a bit strange. I mean, it's tough when you hear somebody in their non-native tongue. They don't really.
He has
sound
fire
right.
when he speaks Hindi, though. I don't even speak the
Yeah.
language. I'm like, yeah, this guy's he's got something going on there.
Exactly. You really don't need to understand it. Just look up some of his speeches in Hindi, and you'll kind of understand why he's got that
Oh yeah, Hitler
that popular
German.
support. Well, yeah, I mean, it's exactly right. I'm
Yeah.
sure if Hitler spoke English, it
No,
would
no,
sound very good.
I just
So
watched
you-
an. Sorry, Stoli.
You named 2 points there, and I think there were really two phases of resistance based on what I've heard from a lot of guys that I listen to in that sphere. Now, 2014, they kind of come into power, but they're very kind of like Trump in a way. Like they coming into power, but not very soft. They don't really have the ability to do what they need to do. And from my understanding, what was the cold ice water that doused them and woke them up and got them to go on the offensive was actually the fact that Trump was kind of a madman that they couldn't predict. And they kind of came to a conclusion that either Trump's going to be the future of America no matter what, or the fact that Trump's here to begin with means that the old deep state, the old regime, the Committee of 300, which if you'll see the same kind of conspiracy theory charts of pyramid schemes that we talk about there, the Indian officers, that's just normal for them. They're very familiar with how the British aristocracy runs things. And so once they had that conclusion and that reaction to Trump, that's where I saw the current foreign minister and a lot of these guys coming out of this, the diplomatic and the intelligence services go, okay, we really need to consider, what is going to be a more populist kind of policy? How are we going to work with partners as populists are taking over around the world? And of course, India is going to be, as we've talked about many times, one of the central fulcrum points that is balancing out. We have the satanic states on the left, we have the CCP on the right. They're kind of working together to screw everyone else over, and in the middle, holding up everything, is going to be Russia and Bharat, India. And of course, with how absolutely destroyed our relations are with Russia, even though us from the Mearsheimer wing of things say that we should be aligned with Russia, that means that even more pressure is going to come down to them acting as the back channel to stabilize things with Russia. And, I'd love to poke Voss's opinion on this. I sadly, I couldn't hear him too well because my last earbuds went out midway when we were on the open mic. So I could only hear through one ear. I could barely hear him. And he had some thoughts on this. But it's going to, for Africa specifically, India and Russia are really the only hope to stabilize Africa after, economic siege through other means, through climate lockdowns, COVID lockdowns, whatever you want to call it, is going to cause the third world to starve. So that's a lot of pressure that's being put on India. And luckily, like, their foreign policy community looks like they're up to the task. They're thinking strategically, they're being proactive, they're not reactive, and it's very impressive to see. Well, but I'd like your thoughts on how you saw that kind of develop from there.
Hold on, as the expert that has zero expertise on any of this. It's just the I get to pull fucking full like trust fund
Do
kid.
it.
Like I get to sit on the, like, I'm on the board of directors at fucking Apple because my dad was Steve Jobs. I'm only here because it's my podcast. I'm like, let me butt in. And but what were you saying about how, like, Trump deep state pyramid hierarchy? India is already well versed in British aristocracy.
So
just real quick,
I'd have to, if we get Adi on, I was hoping he would be here to join us. But
just in general, what were you saying?
So there, I'd have to get the exact one, but there's an old school, and you see these kinds of things in our conspiracy circles all the time, where it's it's the committee of 300, and it's the pyramid scheme that goes all the way down to the debt slaves. I forget the guy that made the pyramid, that chart and everything.
Yeah,
but like that, like for us, that's like we have to debate as to whether or not that's real in the West first before we can even talk about a strategy how to counter it. Meanwhile, if you listen to the former officers that are kind of putting together the plan to push back against the globalists, that's just common knowledge for them, and that's one of the reasons they're so effective, is because they don't have to stop and debate whether or not the old British Empire is real.
Yeah, so, on that topic, I just want to say, like, I think as you kind of get more interested in these sort of conspiracy things, that, as you're saying, and you start noticing, hang on, why do I keep seeing the name Kagan over and over? What's going on here? You look a little bit more into it. You look at the Rhodes Scholarship, for example, Cecil Rhodes, and you start to see some connections with the old British Empire, and you start to realize that what really has happened, is that the old British Empire, which, if you look into the British Empire and the Rothschilds, there's a whole rabbit hole to go down there, that became the American Empire. It wasn't like that was two separate competing
the Pilgrim
empires.
Society is what that turned into.
Exactly. And so it's and it goes back to what Dugan calls the Atlanticist conception of civilization, right? That you have to think about America and England sort of as a unit. And even today, England is our number one ally. I mean, they fucked over the European Union.
Wall Street, New York, City of London. There, like that.
Absolutely, exactly. I mean, and even today, you see England being the number one cheerleaders for Ukraine, which is interesting, right? So the my point is that the Indians are well aware of how that English aristocracy works, and they're well aware that English aristocracy did not die, because that's another thing that happened with the BJP, that they realized that the initial people that the British put in charge of independent India were all honestly British stooges. Even though India did have independence, it wasn't really on their terms. The constitution was kind of compromised, and of course India itself was partitioned into three parts. I mean, so they're aware that this ideology that's coming from this pyramid of shadowy figures is something that goes back at least to 1800, when I would say is when the British Empire started to being taken over by the Rothschilds and various interests like that, maybe even earlier. So the Indians are aware of that.
What I was going to say is one of my favorite guys I've always loved listening to is Ram Dass. He died in 2012, actually right before I started the podcast, Richard Alpert, and he was buddies with Timothy Leary, and they're the one. I mean, he was your cookie cutter, just like Harvard professor on the up and up, keeping up with the Joneses. And then he was like, but this isn't enough. There's got to be something more. I went into acid, the whole thing. But he was saying is like, so as we were doing more and more drugs, and they were really at the pinnacle of the psychedelic movement, and they were giving it to students at Harvard, and they got fired for it, which is kind of fucking awesome. But like, yeah, it was great. But he was
If you go to
saying
Harvard and you don't take LSD, you wasted your time.
you're a fucking
I'm just
faggot.
putting that
Yeah.
in there.
No, yeah. And in
Holy
general,
shit.
if you just go to Harvard,
Sidney
I guess.
Gottlieb.
Yeah, yeah. Shout out, Poisoner in Chief. RP. Isn't his like grandson head of Moderna? Whatever. But like Ram Dass was saying that he's like, so, but we had this whole idea that, you know, first you do it and it's crazy, but as we would do it more and more, and they'd start to look at it as like social psychiatrists and psychologists, it's like whatever, just going into it and trying to map these levels of consciousness of like it wasn't all the same. There was like higher layers of dissolving and deepening your emptiness and on and on and on. He goes, and then we went to my point is about the pyramid thing. He goes, and then we went to India, and it turns out that they had already been mapping this terrain of consciousness for thousands of years. And we would tell them, like, well, then there's this level and this level, and they'd be like, yeah, and then and above that you have this, and so they'd be like, yeah, how do you know? And they'd be like, my grandpa taught me. It was just like a matter of it's like in the winter, you fucking I don't know, like border up the windows, the snow's coming. And so my point is because this is the only way I can relate to what you guys are talking about, is it seems in general these sort of new things that we're debating whether or not they're real, the pyramid of hierarchy, or is this acid shit real? Is this it seems like it's already accepted there. And so what you're saying is they don't have to waste time on debate. So I'm just trying to wonder if, like, is there any tie into that to where it almost seems like they're more confident of go and try to use the same lines you used in college on like a 30-year-old woman. She'll be like, fuck off, frat boy. Like, I wonder if there's almost sort of that, like a wisdom, if anything. Does that make any sense? Am I hitting on
Oh,
anything?
no, well, look, ganja and kush are Indian words, so just saying.
Okay,
it grows wild there on the shore, on the foothills of the Himalayas.
Yeah,
so
no,
India's been a deeply spiritual and sort of Timothy Leary DMT society for a very long time. I mean, if we really want to get deep into it, I'd love to get into sort of the philosophy of polytheism and Brahman and all that stuff.
Timothy Leary's a CIA faggot. But Ram Dass said
the floor with it.
Yeah, when Ram Dass said he met with what would become his guru, Neem Karoli Baba, he goes, I gave him it's like this old, like 90-year-old man. He goes, and I gave him 3 of my white lightnings, which are 315 micrograms of LSD each. He goes, I take it to him, and he's just looking at me a couple hours later, just eyes twinkling, and he goes, what do you think about it? And he goes, Ram Dass, I'm already here. Like it was nothing. Like, gave him the acid, and he was just like, yeah, dog, I've done this before. Like, this is where I exist. So in general, I'm just wondering, as a sort of like a super zoomed out meta theme, because again, it's the only way I can relate to what you guys are talking about, is that something that the satanic child fucking CCP, global homo faggot retard society fears, that there's a confidence, fuck off frat boy, you're not lured in by the
it's a combo of that, and once again getting back to the fact that they're so familiar that it's not a debate. Another example of that is population control and Malthusianism. The moment we try to talk about population control, sure, if we're with the Alex Jones crowd, if we're with the InfoWars crowd, that's common knowledge. You're not going to have anyone going, but Occam's razor, nobody would actually do that. If you turn on,
as an aside, Occam's razor does say it's population reduction. I've come to that conclusion. Sorry, keep going.
So, but but that's what the midwits will hit you with. And but the other side of that you go into is, like, you listen to the Indians talk about this, and there's no debate as to whether or not population control is on the table. It's okay. The policy is going to be out there. Are we doing population control or not? Whether or not we're doing it isn't up. Isn't like, are we allowed to talk about that? It's the debate. It's like, when India shows up to, they're very good at being diplomatic, very, and neutral and stuff like that. But, they're also good at telling the Western stooges what they want to hear. Climate is a good example of this. Like, they play along kind of publicly with the climate change stuff, but at the same time, they turn right around and be like, "Can you believe these guys are fucking so stupid?" Hell, I got to steal this joke from Adi. I was listening to him this morning, and we were laughing our asses off, talking about how the same people trying to save the climate are all the people supporting Ukraine. And Adi's just like, "Yeah, are those hand grenades biodegradable?" And I'm in tears.
Well, in terms of population reduction, Ukraine's very green.
Oh yeah,
which want to slide that out. 500,000 dead's also a drop in the bucket to what they want. In terms of the Occam's, and I know we're jumping all over the place, but in terms of the Occam's razor, I mean, I'm someone that has like gone through all of these discussions with all of these doctors, and I've looked at it as like it's a money thing. But when you break it all down, it's like it finally comes down to this: is don't fix what isn't broken, right? You don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's like, right, DARPA wanted to build this tire that could like turn into a triangle or everything, but there's like 90 moving pieces, and like every veteran that looked at it was like, okay, you're gonna lose one of those screws in the middle of a firefight. Now your fucking super tire can't move. It was like, don't reinvent the wheel. Make it maybe, less dense so it can roll over rocks. Put a spare tire in the trunk. We don't need like DARPA tech on this shit. So I was trying to look at all this, and I've again, as somebody who's probably one of the few people who's been able to like talk to all these doctors one on one, is like, man, the only conclusion I ever could reach was they we've already mastered the grift, and it's just the military industrial comp. I mean, I'm reading about Teddy Roosevelt right now, and like the USS Maine, remember the Maine, and it's like, yeah, we mastered that shit a while ago, man. It's like massive boom for your buck. I mean, 2 planes, World Trade Center, you get $5 trillion in funding. Like, you go get to bomb a million brown people and open black sites. Like, that's an all you can eat buffet. In terms of money making, COVID wasn't like, I mean, they say it's the largest upward transfer of wealth in human history. I don't doubt that. But the amount that went into it, it doesn't balance out. There's something else going on. And so I would say Occam's razor says population reduction, but I just wanted to make that note.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to go on a little bit of a CCP tangent. Yeah. I mean, I have a little bit of a theory about
fucking
COVID.
Rip the wheel off the card, dude.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, demographics are very important. Okay. And the problem is actually not population reduction. The problem is the structure of the population pyramid, right? That really affects everything. If you have a lot of young people and, if you have a population pyramid that looks like this, right? That means that you have a lot of people that are going to have a cheap workforce, not a lot of education, not a lot of assets, but a lot of consumption, right? And but if you have a population that looks like this, okay, where people are not having a lot of kids, well, that's pretty good as long as your bulge of people is in their 40s and 50s, because now these are people that are very productive. And that's what China's been going through for the last 20 years. They've had a huge population bulge going through the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and they've been working and they've been developing the country. But now all these people are reaching retirement age, okay? They're reaching retirement age, and think about what this means. Well, first of all, you've already had the one-child policy, which has depressed birth rates severely in China. But even though that's been lifted, birth rates are not going up in China. Now imagine that you're in a family, you have your wife, and then neither of you have any siblings, and so now you have 4 grandparents or 4 parents to take care of. If you already have 4 parents that are now retired, and let's say that you're in your 30s and they're getting to retirement age, you have to support them. Okay. If you have 4 grandparents that you need to support, you're going to have a really hard time having another child. Okay, so that's really the danger of an aging population. Of achieving population decline by reducing births, is that you end up in a situation where you have a terminal population decline, because it just gets harder and harder and harder to have kids. So you get into the situation that's extremely difficult to get out of. And honestly, I mean, it might not seem, oh, China's got 1.4 billion people. So what if they go down to 700 million? It's still a lot. Well, even at 700 million, you're still going to have this inverted population pyramid, just smaller. Yeah. Exactly. Now, this is a huge fucking problem, right? You have too many old people. It's not just that you don't have enough young people, you have too many old people. Now, imagine a situation where you could put everybody in their house so that they can't really figure out what's going on and who's dying of what, and then you release a virus into the public
that kills primarily
old people. Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, man.
Now, you see, population reduction is okay as long as you have a flat population pyramid. I mean, it's not a bad thing to have fewer people.
In that sense, it seems like it's really not even about population reduction. It's just about changing the pyramid. They don't really give a shit about the 8 billion. It's more so, how's the 8 billion structured?
And every 80-year-old grandma that is no longer a burden on the family's finances is family finances that are now available for, raising a new child.
Yeah.
And it's a brutal way to think about it, especially for a society.
So in a way, China. Is this like the most like wholesome depopulation ever? It's like we need to increase the number of God's gifts coming out of. We need more babies and bundling blankets.
That's like the most optimistic possible way to look at it.
Is this I
appreciate that.
This is how we get hired by the WEF right here.
This is how we do it. Classes like listen to them, listen up. This is it. This is we all just had that moment of like, oh, I guess we're on Team Davos now. not at all, but also and what you were saying, Archimedes, is because I've listened to it so many times, just about England and the United States is was one of the Alex Jones rants. I think it was the first episode he went on with Rogan, 9/11, where he's like, Joe, England's not a separate country. They're married to the United States. They are the 51st state. It's just not to classify. It happened after World War II. It is what it is. And Joe's like, what? He's like, you already know this, and just jumps onto another thing. But that's always
Elon Musk is the deputy head of Space Force. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's always one thing that stuck out to me is Alex Jones has talked about like these underground alliances that are more than alliances. He's like, he wasn't memeing. He was like, no, the United Kingdom is the part of the United States. I always
Small
wondered,
correction.
like, yeah.
Small correction. Scotland should be the 51st state, and England should be the 52nd.
Whatever.
Just to kind of rub in their faces.
Wales isn't
Craig,
real. Fuck
Craig. Craig, when I'm president, I've already promised my first move will be to have you exiled by Delta. But it's all the fucking it's just all a cloudy shithole. It is Wales, it's Scotland. No, it's a bunch of fucking.
Well, it's the Five Eyes, right? It's the Five Eyes. I mean, you have 5 countries: Australia, New Zealand, Canada, United States, and the United Kingdom that literally share intelligence amongst each other, right? I mean, if you have that situation, you're basically all part of the same sovereign.
And Australia,
country.
Pine Gap,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is where
it's all one fucking country.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish that we had maps that looked at it that way. I mean, it would look so cool if you had like the Five Eyes Empire,
the modern Anglo Empire, or something like
that.
Well,
probably. But there was a great book that I started reading. This is back when I was an idiot, and I would start reading books and then ask the author to come on. Versus now, I ask authors to come on, and when they say yes, then I read the book. That way, you can get a lot more bang for your buck. But there was a book called "Hiding the U.S. Empire." And it was like the faulty notion that the United States goes from the West Coast to the East Coast with Hawaii and Alaska. And not just in terms of our bases, but in terms of like control of shipping lanes, natural resources, going back to like the 1800s. It was like the United States empire wraps around the globe, but it is in our interest. It's good PR to have it wrap up. Now, I was a couple chapters into the book and I emailed the author. And he checked out my podcast and said, regretfully, I'm not interested. And I looked him up and he was at Georgetown. So I didn't finish the book as a big fuck you. So, but no, it is in your interest to sort of hide the empire, right? It's you don't want to be big dick on the table. But
Fiona Hill, the best example of this is Fiona Hill. Who was one of the person? And Alex Jones, Roger Stone, they were blowing the whistle about this. Who's the person that's coming for Trump? Who's the person leading the coup inside? It was this woman by the name of Fiona Hill. She's British. There's this British person that's super high level that apparently runs half of our foreign policy. And the hilarious bit that Alex Jones always likes to talk about is she will testify and she will say she doesn't know what a globalist is. And like globalist is some nebulous term that only conspiracy theorists use. She wrote for the globalist. So it's like they're pissing down on your face and telling you it's not raining. That's the way that and that is how British aristocracy thinks. There's a lot of people like that, and it's as soon as you disagree with them, it's just like, oh yeah, you're mentally ill. You should be put in the asylum because meanwhile, was it Tavistock or was it Tavistock or what was the other one that started out as a no, it was
that was Tavistock.
God, Bilderberg started out as a mental asylum, didn't it? Wasn't that like a psychiatric facility? I think.
God, there's so much poetic.
It was one of the two, but yeah, they're a bunch of gaslighting psychotics, and
it's almost corny how poetic that is. If that started as a mental asylum, the whole fucking the inmates are running the asylum. It's almost gay. It's like the fucking like the good guys win in the end. You're like, who the fuck wrote this script? The inmates are running these. This is such fucking lowbrow shit. Yeah, this often happens where, sometimes when you're falling asleep and your thoughts are just kind of running, and then you finally have like an odd thought about like, when's the last time I wore suspenders? And you're like, how did I get on that? And then you go, what was I thinking about earlier? I was thinking about Christmas. And then you walk through all the steps and you go, oh, that's how I got on suspenders. Yeah, that's how this podcast often goes. I'm like, wait, what the fuck are we talking about?
I hate it when you can't. When you try to think about it and then you can't remember what the fuck you were thinking about, and then it's just lost to time, right? Yeah, and it's just always on the tip of your tongue for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I like Nunya's line from last night. This is what happens when you smoke too much dope, people.
Yeah. Well, if you smoke enough dope, you circle back around, you become enlightened. Okay, that's what happened to ancient India.
Do enough drugs. I was watching an Ozzy Osbourne interview the other night, and she's like, "Who do you look up to in your life?" And he goes, "I mean, I'd say Adolf Hitler." She goes, "What?" He goes, "He's a bad guy, but I respect the ability to whip a crowd up like that. If only he had used it for good." And she's like, "Well, I don't know, but he's not wrong. So I don't know. Maybe smoke enough dope and you become enlightened."
Oh, he is a
So
hell of an orator, man. I mean, if you guys haven't listened to Hitler's speeches, you should. You know,
It's fucking
J-
great. I
yeah,
remember when I had
yeah.
my first
yeah.
flip phone, my older brother, my oldest brother, John, I remember he was like, I can make you like a ringtone so you don't have these like gay little like motor like doo doo doo. This is like 2005. And I was like, all right, cool. Cause he, I didn't know how to operate whatever the fuck it was at the time, Napster, LimeWire. And I was like, can you get that song I like? And it's Can't Stop by the Red Hot Chili Peppers that he'd always play. And he was like, yeah. And he went in and he just inserted my ringtone for like a year. It was just an audio of Hitler screaming at a speech.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Shit would
I mean,
go
you're
off on we'd be on MARTA, the Atlanta subway on the way to like
oh
my
yeah.
dad be taking us to a baseball game and it'd just be like, Ich Schleiner, it is heiß.
So on the subject of people that love running drugs and hate Jews, should we move on to the
Move on.
ISI
Yeah,
and Pakistan
yeah,
question?
yeah. Sorry, I keep fucking forgetting about that. Yeah, yeah, no, you do that. I gotta go piss.
Yeah.
That's a classic time piss break.
I will say,
But
if you ever want to hit a new PR in the gym, I mean, put on some fucking Hitler speeches, man. You'll make it.
what was there was a it's probably banned forever from YouTube, but it was called Reich Step. This was back
Oh,
in like
yes,
the
I know
2011,
this.
22. Yeah, the dubstep
Yeah.
yays. And I was like, man, that was some pretty funny stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, getting onto the whole drug thing there and really Pac ISI's bread, Daniel Hopsicker wrote a book called Welcome to Terrorland. Which really it detailed more to Saudi ring of this and how like Saudi royals would use their diplomatic passports and everything to fly drugs into Florida and everything. But we know that Iran and Pakistan both kind of work together to do the same thing, and that the Saudis are basically like they're the little drug mafia that works for the neocon wing and the old school Republican wing, and then you have this alliance of Pac ISI and the Iranians that essentially formed together an alliance, and they're doing the same thing from the other angle of what the Saudis are doing. And so that's been a really, a big boon for how ISI has been able to do stuff. And one of the things that has really, been on my mind lately is we've seen all the images of how Afghanistan's cleaned up the opium problem, right? They've cleaned a lot of that up. That's going to definitely cut into the traffic. And the other thing is that means a lot of the drugs now that are going to be going out through Balochistan is going to be all China. And that does kind of hurt China because China is trying very hard right now to move their all their fentanyl export and their drug export to proxies. They want it coming out through Pakistan rather than China, and they want it coming out. And as Pakistan tightens up, they want it coming out through Myanmar, which is, I believe India is trying their best to sort out that situation, but it's kind of a clusterfuck. And the smartest thing the smartest thing for them to do is play a little bit indirect and work with whoever comes out on top. And they seem to be doing all right with that strategy. But that's one thing that I'm curious about your take on is how do you think Pac ISI and Pakistan is going to adapt to the fact that the drug trade is almost shifting completely to the Chinese source and the entire area that they have to export through Balochistan and that area, they're pretty anti-Chinese colonialism at this point. They're very aware that the high and mighty British chosen aristocrats from Punjab don't really have their best interests at heart. So what are your thoughts on how that's going to play out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a solution for Pakistan. I mean, I think, like you said, Pakistan for the last 20 odd years or so has been working as a proxy for the United States, and that's been a big reason that we've been in Afghanistan is we grow opium in Afghanistan and ship it out through Pakistan, which a lot of people don't really realize, but it's kind of fucked up. But that's what's been going on. And now that the U.S. is divesting from Afghanistan, um, honestly, I don't see a solution for Pakistan. It's just going to slowly, I think, fall apart over time. You know what I mean? I don't think there is an answer at this point.
I'm trying to be neutral because I don't want to sound like I'm just taking the Indian side, but this is very much how they view it right now. And from where I listen to a lot of the Pakis that will talk to me, so to speak, once you get past the tribal hatred of the Paki India thing, they know at the end of the day that Pac ISI is more than happy to basically reduce the country to ashes while they go to London and live. And you have a massive amount. Well, I shouldn't say massive, but you have a good amount of, the officers of the army that aren't that high up. They don't have really a good escape plan to get out. Hell, there's a lot of them. One of the guys I interviewed, major from the Baloch Regiment, cavalry major, Aga Amin. For example, he worked with NATO in Afghanistan as a historian, supporting them. He has 3 sons that now live here in the States. They won't let him come over. So, like, they're screwing a lot of these guys over. They're not giving them any out. The ISI is working with CIA to oust Imran Awan, further destabilizing the situation. So you end up with all of these officers, like, they're like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do here? Because they're watching the country fall apart. I think they have a very good idea of how that's going to happen. And I play around with the thought of, well, like, are they going to sell the bomb to Saudi Arabia to fund their escape plan? Like, what's going to happen with when these officers at the major and colonel level get left high and dry while the PAC guys move to London? And
yeah, I mean, it could be a colonel's coup, right? Where it's not the top level of the military, but the lower levels that kind of come in and take over. And you mentioned the bomb. As far as I'm aware, Pakistan doesn't really have the capability to make more nuclear bombs. They're just sitting on what they have. So if they were to come up with a deal to sell those off to Saudi Arabia, that could open up an opportunity for, the nuclear threat to no longer hang over India, which would, I mean, it would take a moment of unlimited corruption for somebody to make a deal to sell Pakistan's
or
nuclear bombs.
Self-interest for an escape route is
I
the
suppose,
only way
yeah.
I would try to frame that.
Yeah.
I don't believe altruism is going to make that happen, but I think if a bunch of majors and colonels realize they don't have a shot to stay here and they need out, I think they're probably their best bet to do so.
But
it's possible.
So Andy
it's a catch-22 situation. That's why, yeah, I know. That's why I wanted to have this talk here, because we hit this point and it's like, well, what do you do at that point? And it's a tough question.
That's what the SEAL Team 6 guy Andy Stumpf said on Rogan. He was like, nobody's a pacifist, and Joe's like, no, I've met some pacifists, and he's like, I could make him a warmonger in 3 seconds. He was like, how? And he goes, you put a revolver to his kid's head. Self-interest,
yeah,
just is what it is, right? Doesn't make it right, but yeah,
it's as the late great Henry Kissinger says, who, I got to start quoting him as I'm trying to take up the mantle of Dark Lord that he's left open now. We don't have
the force.
Yeah, we don't have permanent friends. We have permanent interests in geopolitics. So it's like, am I really trying to get in bed with Hindu nationalists in a rising India because, like, I just want to be best friends? No, not really. It's because I see a very common enemy, and a rising multipolar India pushing back on our Sorosy woke globalist state aligns so much with my interest that whatever the 25% that isn't in my interest, that's so minuscule that it doesn't even register on my radar. So that's the full disclosure of why I'm looking at India as a partner that we need to start working with.
Yeah.
And and I think that's, to get into the altruistic side, and back into the Africa thing, who else can stabilize Africa? The Africans don't trust anybody. The only people the Africans will kind of trust would be India and Russia. And I think if Russia was really smart, they would kind of take junior partner to India and kind of let India lead the charge, because I think they have the most credibility in the continent, so to speak.
Oh, there's a ton of Indians in Africa, especially in East Africa. I mean, because most of the British colonial administrators, the administrator class was Indian, for Uganda and South Africa and these other British colonies in East Africa. So there's a lot of Indians there already. I mean, as India becomes more wealthy, I think that is exactly what they're going to try and do. There's this great book I read by Robert Kaplan, who's a total CIA shill, but he writes some good books, and it's called Monsoon, I think. And he just it's a travelogue where he goes around to the different to all the different ports along the Indian Ocean coast. Like, he goes from Zanzibar to Oman to Gwadar, to various other places, some place in Malaysia and then the Philippines, and just talks about how all these places were kind of connected all the way through to antiquity by the monsoon winds, right? The monsoon's not really a storm, it's a wind system that flows in one direction for 6 months and then in the other direction for 6 months every single year, like clockwork. And that, in the age before steamships, right, allows for a very convenient sailor's life, right? Where these places all the way from South Africa, Philippines, that whole coastline was all sort of connected by the monsoon winds. So that natural sort of geopolitical situation, I think, is going to reassert itself. And if you look at a population density map of the region, I mean, India is kind of the natural center of that Indian Ocean region. That's definitely what they should do strategically speaking. They need to reassert their naval control of the Indian Ocean. And that also, getting a little more into the strategy here, I mean, if they're opposed to China, the biggest thing that they can do to China, it has nothing to do with Tibet or Ladakh or Kashmir. These are all sort of distractions that are really total sideshows. What they need to do if they want to actually have leverage over China is have an extremely strong navy that can block the oil shipments coming out of the Persian Gulf going into China, or just block the trade in the Strait of Malacca. If they can do that, China's completely fucked because China depends very heavily on oil that comes out of the Persian Gulf, and India is in the perfect position to totally block that off if they had the ability to, if they had the naval power projection to. So they should try
Yeah,
and
I
do that.
definitely agree with that. That's something I've been kind of hammering on to, a lot of my buddies for a while now, is that, the best, while everyone's really focused on Taiwan as whether or not Taiwan's going to be under siege, I kind of fall into the argument that, 51% of Taiwan's already halfway in the CCP.
Yeah.
They're already on that side. So I'm of the argument Taiwan could be, and as your episode was titled the other day, Tommy, Taiwan could be annexed without firing a shot, much like Hong Kong, I think. Because if we can't do counterintelligence against the Chinese here, how am I supposed to expect that the Taiwanese can do counterintelligence?
Not even that. It's not, are we unable? It's that we are able, but we're bribed to not do anything. So why would our top guys already know about Taiwan?
So
our guys would just go, yeah, no, fucking.
So seeing as we're pretty compromised and inept at the moment, the best thing that would be in our interest to contain China would be India having an incredibly strong navy, and that's the perfect way to segue into the Qatar Mozambique situation, which is essentially, if you don't know the submarine drama there, eight Indian Navy sailors were sentenced to death for spying for Israel in Qatar. And the reason that happened, the backstory behind this whole thing, is Qatar decided that they were going to purchase 2 small submarines from an Italian company. All right. And apparently the Israelis allege that Qatar has a deal with Iran to hand over one of those subs to Iran because Iran really wants access to, the upgrade electronics and suites and all that kind of, Gucci shit. So that has led to these Indian guys, which, if you don't know, India's intelligence community today is kind of modeled after the Mossad. They're very tight with Israel's intelligence community. If you're introduced to Indo-Pak politics, you're usually told that PAC ISI is based on MI6 and that RAW is Research and Analysis Wing, that's their CIA, is based on CIA. And that might have been true 30 years ago. But Colonel Honey Bakshi, who put together the technical support division after the Mumbai attacks, which was basically them breaking glass, putting all the warfighters and the top guys that rub everyone the wrong way politically, but you call them in a fight, they put these guys together. And that guy's on record saying that his intel Bible, the intel officers of his generation, was by ways of deception unmasking a Mossad officer. And keep in mind, that guy's now kind of out of it and retired. So the Indian intelligence community today is not just emulating the Mossad. They are the next generation evolved from the guys that emulated Mossad, and they have the lessons learned. So that's one of the reasons why you see in this whole Israel-Hamas conflict too, you see India so quickly to come out to bat for Israel. And it's because at the end of the day, those two intelligence communities, they're working each other, they're training each other up. And it turns out if you're an Israeli and you need some guys that can, pass for, a Middle Eastern guy, guess what? Indians work. Indians know how to go undercover in Pakistan. So, they can they can make that role work very well. It's a good partnership for them. And so we're seeing that kind of blowback over Qatar and that whole spying ring. And this actually circles back into Mozambique, which, I was talking about back in 2018, 2019-ish. Cabo Delgado, Mozambique, while a lot of people were pulling out of there because they just thought it was too unstable. Originally, it was the Russian Wagner guys, before Wagner was cool, that was in there. They were having a tough time. They kind of got pushed out. I believe there were some U.S. Green Berets that kind of went in, but they were mostly just trying to get an idea of what the hell's going on there. Then you had essentially the whole situation really start to escalate, pop off, and drive investors even further away. And it was really just a handful of middle-aged South African special forces guys that came in and kind of stabilized the situation up there. It was, one of those, God was watching these guys, because that was some risky stuff that they pulled. And nowadays we're seeing India reacting to Qatar sentencing their Navy guys to death. And they're going, well, how do we replace the Qatari gas? And the answer for them is Cabo Delgado, Mozambique, and the LNG there. So India is actually picking up the tab and coming in and saying, hey, we're going to be the guys that pick up on this. And it's very convenient for them because just off the coast of Mozambique is this little island called Mauritius. And half of the Indian intelligence community right now is on that island figuring out how to develop the LNG. So that's basically what we're seeing start to develop, replacing the supply chains, getting that kind of thing going. And, what's India going to need to secure all that? They need a stronger Navy.
They do.
So.
Yeah, and that's why it's kind of genius for China to keep poking them up in the north, right? Because the more that India is focused on Tibet and Ladakh, or I mean, the less, and Arunachal Pradesh and all that, the less that they're going to be concerned about the Navy, the less energy they're going to have for that. And China knows it. It's very intelligent that they're doing that. I mean, if you look at the Gulban clashes from a couple of years ago, that was just hilarious. It was literally just a battle with sticks.
Yeah.
Like it was just like, I think, 50 guys on each side, something like that, hitting each other with like batons. And a couple people actually died. I mean, which is just absurd. The two nuclear powers of billion-plus people fought each other in a mountain pass with sticks. I mean, what kind of game is going on there? It's
the
just
greatest
absurd.
game of all time,
Yeah.
as it's called.
Yeah, I think it's fucking awesome. I always love that scene from Interstellar where fucking Matt Damon and whoever are like fighting on that distant world, and they're both like slugging each other out.
Yeah.
And it just slowly pans out as they're just both fighting on this barren terrain. And I always just thought it was so poetic that they like use some weird ship to use like a black hole to bend time to go to another planet. But as it zoomed out, it really did just look like two proto hominids just fighting on the plains. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Like I kind of get annoyed at superhero movies how they have these fucking cosmic stakes and everything, and then it just gets settled by a fucking glorified fist fight, but I guess there is some poetry to that too.
Yeah. In terms of Africa, I talked about, is it just, China is fake and gay, but you can't knock what they're doing, man. I mean, to people that don't have anything, and don't mistake this for empathy. I don't give a shit. But to people that have nothing, the Belt and Road Initiative would win them over. That is hearts and minds. Is that the only way to fight it? If you're just talking about who wants to, you said there's a lot of Indians and a lot of Indians in Africa, and who's going to control Africa. I mean, sure,
they are the best option right now. You have, and Voz kind of brought this up on the open mic in a very good way. Like right now, the Africans are so fed up with the Western interest and everything that their mindset's really anyone but these assholes. So like a lot of them, they know that the Chinese, have a thing for debt trap diplomacy.
Yeah,
they know that the Chinese aren't,
they know
the best guy. Catch. But at the end of the day, we're worse. We're infinitely worse. We have far more paperwork and far more bullshit that comes with us. So they're going to take China over us just because, fuck us. We've been fucking them forever. And so that makes sense. The only real alternative, and, as Voz was saying, the only chance that they have to form a real partnership, and actually get things going is with India and Russia. And, I would say India definitely has the credibility to take lead on that. And if Russia was to help with providing security, I would say India and Russia have the best bet to counter Belt and Road in Africa.
Yeah. Yeah. On the topic of why the U.S. is so much worse. I mean, okay, China will build you a port, and then they're going to take it, and then they're going to go and start stationing military units on your territory at some point, right? And that's the downside. The U.S. is going to do that, and they're also going to turn you gay. Right. My wife was friends with a girl in college who did this summer program in Kenya, where she was working with researchers who were basically going around these villages and talking and looking at their reactions to LGBT stuff, to homosexuality. And basically, of course, as you can imagine, Kenyan villages, they were extremely anti-homosexual. They were like, the only reason that we even know what a homosexual is because of these freaking white people that keep coming here and showing us and educating us about homosexuality. And you guys need to get out and let us go back to not having homosexuals. And this girl's paper that she was writing was about how their attitudes against homosexuality were actually a colonial imposition. And that in order to decolonize, they needed to go back to their indigenous ways where they actually were accepting of homosexuals. Only reason they're homophobic was because of the British colonization. White people bad, I guess. So, when you have that kind of ridiculous ideology, right? I mean, I can see why we're not.
I
the
call
best
this
option.
I steal something from the Chinese. I call this 9-dash timeline thinking, where we just retroactively go back and we're like, you don't understand. Your culture was gay all along. It says
Whole
so since
family's
ancient
gay.
times.
Whole family's gay. No, but
I like that. Yeah.
in terms of like the debt peonage thing, it's like, sure, we look at that as like, hey, dude, China's going to build this port and they're going to be super fucking cool about it, and they're going to build you a couple of universities, a highway, and they're going to put in some telephone wires. But hey, man, they're going to take it from you eventually. If you're in a backwards shithole, you're going to be like, yeah, whatever. It's a win-win. I already have nothing. What do you mean I'm in debt? Like now I have a hospital.
Now, here's the difference between, why it's going to be more preferential to work with, the Indians versus the Chinese. You look at Gwadar, you look at Pakistan, all right? China's going to put in a bunch of investments. They're going to build a town that's really just for the Chinese, and they're going to get really mad if you, as someone in your own country, shows up into their little Chinese colony that they have. Meanwhile, if you look at, India's population in Africa, they've already pretty much assimilated. They're already established on the business end, just from private businesses. They're already well respected, so they're already established there. So if India as a state project decides they're going to come in and really ramp up development, okay, they've already got the PR on their side. They've already got the diaspora communities that are, have good reputation, good credibility. And to go back into the Mossadification of India's intelligence community, one of the reasons why I kind of left this out, but one of the reasons why that model is so well suited for Indian intelligence is that Mossad, what always allowed Mossad to punch above their weight, and keep in mind, like as of the 1990s, there was usually only like 30 to 40 what we would call case officers. They call them katsas, at any point in time. It's a very small group, but what allows them to hit above their weight is the way that they have Jewish diaspora communities everywhere. And they're really good at, developing assets in those diaspora communities. So India, which has a very small intelligence community for its size, adopting that model to punch above its weight has been very successful. And if they have mastered that model and it starts to ramp up with the population size and the size of their military and intelligence complex that they actually can support, you're going to have an incredibly formidable force that is probably going to be one of the premier intelligence services within the next 20, 30 years, if I had to guess. If it's not already.
I just want to know why I haven't been co-opted by an intelligence agency yet.
You have. I mean, why do you think I send Monmar in?
Yeah, no, I get that angle, but I'm Monmar's sure seductive. Dale's far more seductive, and he's never sure. Monmar's attractive, but Dale is, it's fucking G.I. Joe. I'm like, yeah,
Well, that's why he's the judge for the mustache competition, because we can't even compete for that.
Yeah, you're right. See, Monmar, you'd have post-nut clarity. With Dale, pre-nut, post-nut, I'm like, how do I become you? Dale's 60, and Dale texted me like a month ago, and he's like, just turned 60. He's like, I'm gonna go try to get another boxing title, and I just entered in a bodybuilding competition, and I was like, this is like what I want to be.
And then he's gonna go knock over a country, as doing some,
because he's bored. He's gonna, yeah. One time I get to hang out with him and his wife, and she was like Dale's still working. He's like, on and off, and she was like, he left one time and said that he had to go do, what was it? He had to go do like economic advising for like a strip mine. And Dale was like,
that's what Delta does.
Dale was like, technically it was economic because money was changed hands, and I was physically near a mine. So, but he wasn't even saying it to me. He was just like, babe, I wasn't lying to you. But no. So Dale hasn't co-opted me yet, which is, maybe Dale's just playing hard to get, because I would join Dale's intelligence service. But going back to selling a bomb to Saudi Arabia, why wouldn't that happen in terms of just general, like the general temperature of the world kind of turning up right now?
Yeah, they kind of call Pakistan's bomb, they call it the Muslim bomb, because it's kind of on the market for any Muslim country. I think that's understood by most Muslim countries that if it comes down to it, you can get a bomb for Pakistan, which is fucked up, but it is what it is.
Fucked up.
I don't know.
It's the global inflation. It's the global
and Kapistan, baby.
It's the global. It's the global Second Amendment. It's the nation state Second Amendment.
Global Second Amendment.
And no, it is though.
Yeah,
it is.
Okay.
You don't like me having one? Well, I have one and you have one. Maybe we should play nice. Not saying
Yeah,
now.
okay.
Granted, the difference is, no pun intended. The fallout is a lot different than me and Stoli shooting each other versus there. But there's a book I read forever ago. I think it was like 2004. So as a normal 14-year-old, I remember reading this book, and it was obviously a fiction book. But I think it was called Hellfire or Wildfire. But it was the idea that there was like a secret kind of agreement with like the heads of all the Saudi nations, not Saudi nations, excuse me, the Muslim nations, that if a nuclear bomb ever went off on U.S. territory, we would launch like 350 like 10 megaton thermonuclear warheads on all these cities and all these holy sites. And so eventually, like, if the question ever arose, like, how has the U.S. not been nuked by like a suitcase bomb from like a radical fundamentalist? And they're like, even 9/11 is like allowed. It's like they'll let that happen. We'll still go do a war and rape their land, but it won't be a thermonuclear repercussion. But
Well,
it was
if there's ever going to be an opportunity, it's going to be now with the openness of the southern border. I mean, who knows what the
but
fuck they could sneak
well,
through there.
well, and then that was the argument of the book, is like, so there's like some underling and the CIA who's like, yeah, I get these attacks, but how's there never been a nuke? And he's like, because the Muslim nations won't let it happen. They have control over all the terrorist cells, and they're going, hey, you put a nuke on U.S. soil, Mecca's going to turn to dust. And
See,
then the book goes on that some like, it's almost like a Dick Cheney, George H.W. Bush amalgamation character tries to set off two nukes. And it's actually kind of funny. He wants to set off two nukes in the United States to wipe out the Muslim worlds, to allow like a new golden age. And he has to choose a nation. And
yeah.
that's all bad, but he has to choose two cities to nuke. And he chooses San Francisco and LA because they're gay.
Based. Yes. That's exactly what I would choose. Well, I don't know, maybe Seattle and Portland.
Something like that. But he's like, we're sticking to California.
Yeah.
So this is actually the perfect kind of segue to get into terrorism, false flag psyops, and that kind of fun stuff.
On that book.
I guess we should probably talk about Panoon and that why you would encourage. I'm going to use Panoon and the Khalistan terrorists here as a bit of an example. Talk about why if you're going to try to get another community, police another community.
Sorry.
The best way to try and police another community is to tell the guy that runs that community he needs to police his people, right? Get them to police their community. Don't go in and do it. And so, that's one of the things that we're seeing right now around this Panoon guy. So if you don't know, I don't know his first name well enough to not butcher it, but Panoon's his last name. And he's this lawyer, pro-Palestine. I keep saying Palestine.
I like it. No, I like it. I like Palestine. We'll come up with a meaning later.
I think I stole that from Adi, and it just kind of got stuck in my
California.
Yeah, it just kind of got stuck in there.
No,
but
Khalistan.
Yeah,
Khalistan.
But so he's a fake Sikh. This guy was basically a clean-shaven lawyer until basically he was recruited by someone to be a wedge issue. India would allege that CIA runs this guy. But essentially, he was recruited to be a wedge issue to rile up the Khalistan movement, to put pressure on India. And, he lives here in the U.S. And this guy, Tommy, what do you think would happen if I made a public announcement that I'm going to have a bunch of protesters shut down an airport? Do you think, like, someone would show up in my house, arrest me, shoot me, or something like that if I were to say I'm going to have an airport shut down because my political objectives aren't met?
Well,
I think that would qualify.
Depends what your political objectives are, because half the nation, it depends which side it is.
Okay,
you're either going to be cheered on or you're going to be no.
Okay, so here's the thing. Did you ever see BLM shut down an airport?
That's a good point. Now, right after the immigration ban, they have a bunch of token things. You're right. They never actually got to the.
Yeah, they never even went that far. So this Panoon character will threaten to do things like that from the States. And there's no charges for that. There's nothing on that. And they keep this guy around. And there's actually... Yeah, he's basically an asset used to rile up, things in India to use as a wedge issue. Now, the interesting thing is and this gets into kind of that relationship between ISI, CIA, and the left wing and everything. So they see the Mossadified Indian IC whacking people allegedly whacking people in Canada and elsewhere. The running joke is unknown gunman is taking these people out, and they're like, well, how do we capitalize on this and deal with the whole situation? And so what they did is they basically tried to it's more of a psyop. They didn't false flag him, they didn't kill him, but they made it seem like India took a shot at this Panoon guy on US soil, and the dates don't really add up. It was supposed to be like a suspicious car accident and everything. And from my perspective, And from listening to, the Indian guys that I listen to, they would not look at this as like, hey, we want to kill this guy to achieve an objective, right? That would not be a good thing. Like they're thinking like old aristocratic thought. They're like, we want to use this as an albatross around the State Department's neck so that we can beat them over the head with it in negotiations. All right. And by doing that, we're going to encourage them to self-police because their target isn't necessarily Panoon himself. They don't want to kill Panoon, from my perspective. They want the intelligence officers that are running Panoon to get smacked over the head and said, hey, you're never going to work in the real business again. Here's a Department of Agriculture job. You're done. That would be, from my perspective, that if I was wearing their hat and trying to do something, that would be my idea of a strategic objective there, is trying to get America to police its own rogue elements rather than try to go in there and whack them and police stuff on U.S. soil. So now you come at this from the American side. Well, you've got this guy, all right, that is calling for airports to be shut down. You've got India State Department coming after your career saying that you should probably be put in the Department of Agriculture because you're running this guy. What's your best out? How do you get rid of this? Well, you run a false flag, right? You have your guy clipped and you say India did it. So that's kind of my mindset there on the kind of aims of why you would not necessarily just go straight for the target, killing Soleimani, so to speak, in the Trump terms, but instead you would try to basically pressure the gang that you're negotiating with to clean their own shit for you. Because, that's kind of my mindset on that.
Kind of Wildfire-esque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll prevent the nuke because their own people will have it prevented.
Exactly. And, it's as above, so below. It's kind of that's the microcosm version of it, but it's the same thing at the top. The Muslims are going to police their own if they know we're going to hammer them. It's like, something I've been saying for all these neocons and all these, these American Zionists that they will drag their balls over broken glass to go and support Israel. All right. And they want to go bomb Iran. Okay. That's fine and all. I'm not an apologist for Iran or anything, but the first thing I'm going to say is someone that's read Losing Hearts and Minds and seen these Brookings people that are all in bed with Iran and trying to figure out how do we give more pallets of cash to Iran. My first thought is, if we're going to war against somebody, if we're going to bomb somebody, the first thing you need to do is counterintelligence. You need to get rid of every traitor in the ranks before you go and fight the enemy abroad. So I hear this all as a joke, because it's like, if we were really serious about getting Iran on side, if we went and we whacked Obama and we whacked like half of the Obama acolytes that are pro-Iran, I guarantee you the mullahs would call us up and start taking us seriously before we even had to drop a bomb on Iran.
So
but,
I don't get no knocked. That's all a hypothetical example.
And once again, I'm not. Hey, wait. By the way, I'm not saying that.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying.
I'm saying tried for treason because they were working with Iran. Okay, I'm saying they should be hung for treason for working with Iran. I'm not saying that we should be extrajudicially whacking Iranian assets. But guess what? If you really want to support Israel, if you really want to bomb Iran, you would be an idiot not to do that first. And that's why I say our neocons are fucking idiots. But that's another story for another day.
And if you do take someone out extrajudicially and you need to hide the evidence, tosskit.com.
Tosskit.com, baby. Well, see, he's a natural. He's already
right there.
Yeah, I subjected myself to that 4-hour video of you guys talking about Tosskit.
You didn't subject yourself to it. You allowed yourself to ease yourself into that hot tub of joy. But then you have to wonder, how much of our leadership is controlled by Israel, which would make sense, right? And I don't view that as some fucking, like, if you're Israel, you're this tiny little nation in the middle of a bunch of people that want to kill you for whatever reason. I don't give a shit. It would be in your interest to blackmail the United States, because it all sounds, they're our best ally. That all sounds good on paper until the shots start firing, and then someone goes, yeah, you're no longer our ally, and then you're fucked. What you would want is you'd want a bunch of senators maybe compromised on Epstein Island, and to say, hey, if shit ever pops off, I don't know, you'll send 2 carrier groups over. And it's understood that a bunch of 4K video of them doinking a 4-year-old doesn't all of a sudden flood the internet.
Yep.
Well, then you have to wonder if they have control or influence on our leadership, then how does that affect what we're doing abroad? Is that us or is that them?
This is why I love the Indian take on this, because they don't beat around the bush with this. They are more than happy to say that the American coastal elite Jews are self-hating Jews. They hate Jews. And these are the people that enable the Hamas elements and enable the pro-Iranian elements, because they're the ones saying, hey, we're the Jews that are okay with this from the U.S. And the problem with that is the Jews in Israel actually listen and trust until recently, they listened and trust these self-hating Jews. And this is, really the ultimate tragedy is no one's, the Israel's worst enemy is their self. Because at the end of the day, you look at Bibi Netanyahu and you look at the Israeli establishment, they took Trump and Jared Kushner for a ride, and they got a really sweet deal at the Abraham Accords. They got a really good deal at that. But what did they do right after doing that? They said, well, we also have a lot of really great deals with the old deep state. We, with the adults, it would be nice to have our cake and eat it too. It's really nice what we got out of Trump, but it's time to go back to the adults in the room. So they worked with the self-hating Jews and, the coastal elites, New York specifically, and they stabbed Trump in the back. And we're like, hey, let's go back to working with the adults in charge. And what did that get them now? I believe the title of your episode with Claire coming up is, the Biden regime, the Obama acolytes and everything are like, don't eradicate Hamas. Hold on. Don't. Yeah. So it's like, at the end of the day, what really destroyed Israel was Israelis, because what happened after that? Not only did they stab Trump in the back and put a bunch of pro-Iranian dudes in charge in the U.S., well, then look at what happened to the Hamas attack. It's all coming out now that Israel knew about about the flood operation for a year out. That's starting to come out now. Right. So then you have a color coup, looks a lot like, kind of a Ukrainian pride, revolution almost. A lot of guys with, LGBT flags out in the street trying to run a coup against Bibi Netanyahu, who is now starting to realize that, the liberal Jews, so to speak, or Erev Rav is the proper term Jews like to use for the traitorous Jews, self-hating Jews, or the false not Jews claiming to be Jews to use Jews as a shield. The Erev Rav is the term for that. But after that happens, the backstabbing gets worse, because, if you listen to Jeffrey Prather and his interview with Michael Flynn and, all that stuff, they're like, Israel stood down for 7 hours because you want to know how really expedient.
Want to know how I know something's fucking up? And again, I am my brain's been cooked in that I just now see like ulterior motives to everything just through this podcast. Nothing makes sense anymore. On an aside, I remember when the fucking who's his face Oliver Anthony came out. My first response was I was like, something's up. Fucking white boy from looks like he's from
ginger bastard.
And not only that, I was angry because I'm like, everyone's like, he's so smart, and I'm like, he's saying nothing new. He's saying that the rich have a disproportionate amount of money and power. I was like, something's up with this. And then it flops and he turns out and says diversity is our strength and he's a faggot. That's not the point. You know how I know something is up with October 7th is because the next day, not even now, how when time passes and it becomes acceptable to say things, the next day, fucking meme man himself, Charlie Kirk, said, was there a stand down? He starts talking about, he's like, I've flown in a helicopter across Israel. He's like, it takes longer to go across New York State.
Yeah.
And he goes, and Bibi Netanyahu has an election. When Charlie Kirk, fucking USA mean guy, comes out and goes, this was allowed. That's what I'm like, something's up.
So when Bibi Netanyahu stabbed Trump in the back and put all the pro-Iranian self-hating Jews in charge that were then trying to run a coup against him in Israel, guess what the most expedient and, best political move for him to do? Stand down, let it be kind of bad, and then use that as your 9/11. So he fixed his previous backstab by backstabbing the Jews.
Did they have a project for a new Israeli central paper? New Israeli century paper, like we had PNAC right before 9/11. We're absent a cataclysmic event in downtown Manhattan, we won't be able to do it.
It's less of that, and it has more to do with the natural gas reserves just off the coast.
Right
of
off,
that's really what it comes down to, and that's been known for a very long time.
The
Israelis have been trying to figure out how they're going to handle that situation for a while.
That is a PNAC thing. Maybe they didn't put it in writing, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
How do we do what we want to do?
Yeah, and so then not only by issuing a stand down and fixing one backstab with another backstab, not only does Bibi save his, his kind of conservative hardliner status and, power base, but, it also opens up the ability to go and do what they've been wanting to do for a long time. The old joke was Moses led the Jews through the desert to the one place that didn't have gas. And, and then they found the LNG reserves.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's just off the coast of Gaza. So it's like, sorry, Gaza, gotta go.
Doesn't it almost
fire the mortars, redraw the borders, as we said.
Fire the mortars, redraw the borders, stand with Israel. God, it almost does seem like it's all just a simulation to see like how can we fuck everything. It's like let's get the most barbaric fundamentalist people ever, and we'll put them on like $100 quadrillion of oil. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Like it's putting the key to your car under a grizzly bear. It's like a shitty show. It's like let's see how he gets the key. Like I don't know.
Well, it was a total accident, right? I mean, the discovery of oil in the Persian Gulf, or the major discoveries, really happened like right around the same time that the Ottoman Empire was collapsing. I mean, if the Ottomans had held down, I mean, we don't need to get into fucking World War One alternate history, but if somehow the Ottoman Empire were to survive World War One,
hey, it's coming back.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I mean, I fucking stand the Ottoman Empire, man. But if it were to happen, or if they were to have held out, I mean, world would have been totally fucking different because they would have had control of the Arabian Peninsula, of Iraq, and all that, and they would have had a shitload of oil money. I mean, it would have been a totally different situation.
Fez's would be in style. It'd be awesome.
Oh yeah. Oh man, imagine that. Yeah. No, I mean, on the topic of Israel, man, I think the thing that gets me about everyone has lobbies, right? In the United States, everybody tries to vie for some control over the United States. But I think the reason that the Jewish people have so much control, I think, is a sort of a spiritual thing, right? It's the evangelical Christians in
it's
America.
1,000% that.
Yeah, they have a huge they simp for Israel. I mean, they simp for Judaism.
It
very
kind of blurs.
deeply.
It's evangelical, Jesus, Israel, Jerusalem. It's like the whole thing. It's just like, yeah, don't look into it. They're on our side. No, it
Yeah,
is.
exactly, right?
That's
Well,
absolutely true.
I mean, there's a very explicit sort of eschatology about it. Like, that the Jews are God's chosen people. They need to return to the Holy Land and build the third temple, and that's all sort of part of the theology. I'm no expert on that, but that's what's going on there. And I kind of want to connect this to India just to talk about the idea of monotheism and polytheism. Because Indians are effectively, right, the Hindu religion is a polytheistic religion. It believes that there's multiple gods, multiple forces. I mean, on some level, there's a sort of monotheism there. People often say that Judaism is monotheistic. Well, ancient Judaism was not actually monotheistic. It was something called henotheistic, okay, where they believed that there were other gods, but they believed that their God was the supreme God over all other gods. All right, so the world is sort of, look at this worldview as our ontology, our God is supreme over everybody else's. It's not like it's everybody's God, it's our God, and it's supreme over the rest. That's the difference. Now, if you're looking at it from that perspective of, okay, I want my God to be the supreme God over the rest of the of everybody else, then I think what you ought to imagine what a victory it would be for you from that perspective of an ancient Jew to be able to say, you know what, let's go ahead and create a religion or two that believes that there is no other God except for our own God. And then we'll have billions of people around the world not only believe that our God is the supreme one, but not even believe in the existence of the others. You see what I'm saying? So Christianity, in a sense, is, and Islam too, to a lesser degree, or maybe even to the same degree, it's just not quite as explicit in Islam, are effectively religions that glorify the Jewish God as the only God that exists, while Judaism itself, ancient Judaism, literally acknowledges that there are other gods, but the Jewish God is just the supreme one. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's why there's this animus to polytheism more strongly than anything else, because that might be a revival to poke a hole in that entire monotheistic idea.
That's kind of brilliant. Yeah, it's kind of like Anchorman, where he's like on the date, and he's like, Mr. Burgundy, will you please play some jazz flute? He's like, Dino, please. I couldn't possibly. And he's like, Please, and he goes, I'm so unprepared, and he pulls it out of his sleeve. Like it's like it's like we didn't say we had an only God. It was these 2 billion people. But I mean, listen, if you're gonna say it, then sure, I guess. I didn't say it, right? It's writing, it's using an alt account to praise my own podcast, right? Like, this is the fucking greatest podcast ever. That dude's totally not gay, and even though he looks Aryan, I doubt he's a Nazi.
Well, it's not even that. It's like you have a billion alt accounts that believe that yours is the only podcast that ever existed and ever will exist. So it's the greatest, but it's not even just the greatest.
I could be
the only one
intoxicated by that power.
That's what I'm saying, right? I mean, I get it.
And that's the real issue that we're at now. And hopefully we're seeing a lot of rise of Orthodox Christianity kind of starting to become popular, and that's a little bit better at pushing back. I know when back 2010 2012ish, when I was growing up, Orthodox Christian, like Americans being Orthodox Christian, was almost unheard of outside of like Russian martial arts circles with full of all these Russian airborne guys that came over in the 90s. You didn't really hear about this. But now with it's very obvious that liberation theology has kind of taken over, whether it's Catholic or Protestant or whatever. These commie versions of the churches have kind of come out and have kind of really teared the mask off and just kind of shown everyone just how kind of corrupt all these institutions are. So now you have all these Gen Z guys are watching folks like Jay Dyer and whatnot, and they're realizing, all right, well, let's try this Orthodox Christianity thing out. And so we're seeing a little bit of a split from there that I hope that will lead to a Christianity that is, more able to push back against the evangelical Zionism. As I always say, it's like, if you're going to be Christian right now, who is the defender of the faith? Who's the sovereign authority of Christendom right now? And for me, it's like, who has the authority and has shown that they're able to drop a thermobaric bomb on a biolab? For me, that's how I know Russia is the, essentially the sovereign authority of Christendom. And I'm kind of looking at all these evangelicals like, midwit people that they just, they didn't really pay attention to what the preacher was saying. They just kind of listened, and then they got home and they just left Fox News on. And then, it just kind of got into the background, and there was like, yeah, Israel, the temple, like you were saying earlier, they don't really know what the hell they're talking about. Even they just know Israel's the good guy, and we
general blur. Yeah, it's like, again, it's like somebody who's
drunk, hazy blur. That's
it's like if you're not a fucking chemistry or biology major, you just go, it's all the beakers and the test. It's the guys, and they do the fungus and the that whole thing, right? It's the same way I look at like aeronautics. I'm like, airflow and aluminum and bomb Hiroshima. It's I get it, I understand. In terms of like full circle schizo, and we do got to wrap up in a couple minutes so I can get this one down so Claire can come up and we will do another one. Is just going full off the deep end now, is like, what was weird is I think it was the head of the Russian Orthodox Church was with Buzz Aldrin when they visited Antarctica. What the fuck was that about? Back in like 2015 or 2016.
The fuck?
Yeah. That's where I start to just like,
who needs to hear that question? There's only
John
one
Kerry
man
was there too. Sorry.
There's only one man I can think of that question needs to be forwarded to, and you have the capability to do it. No, well, actually him too, but Leo Zagami.
That's Leo would know
that. Leo would be.
Leo would know without batting an eye. He'd be like,
he would be like, the Masonic Lodge here
intertwined with area with the Babylonian technology. It's a mile below Antarctica.
And then he'd give you a really good chicken recipe because he's Italian, and that's what they do.
Fucking clip ever. 1 second, he's talking about like the ritual eating of toddlers, and he's like, 1 second, I need to put the lemon on the chicken. It's like, wait, what?
Most Italian shit I've ever seen in my life.
You just saw him. He like looking. He's talking to me. He's like, you really tell it was just like old world. It was like two men talking to each other, and then he looks at his wife and he's like, hey. He's just like pointing her, and I'm just like, I was like, love isn't dead.
Did you ever have him and his wife both on the podcast? Because they're adorable together. They're absolutely an adorable couple.
No, I haven't, but I couldn't do that. He told me to reach out to him in the new year, so I guess I will next year. But for right now,
almost there.
Oh yeah, almost. It's fucking December 4th. Christ almighty. Yeah. 14 years ago. I think I got our hell week ended 14 years ago. I always remember this date because it was just fucking the worst time of my life. Just fucking the absolute most god awful time. And I look back at that and I go, all that struggle for nothing. So I don't know what the takeaway from that is. Sell a nuke to Saudi Arabia. It doesn't mean anything.
Hell yeah.
But Archimedes, Stoli, thank you. Obviously, we're in the group chat. We can set up another one. We can get everybody on. But yeah, Claire Lopez after this. And yeah, guys, go buy some coffee. Listen, the Great War is coming, and you're gonna want to be caffeinated for it, or maybe not.
We got one more thing we got to shield though before we
turn
down.
Yeah.
Oh hell yes.
Tom Mead's wife has a book out, and it's called Screens and Ego. And if you're a parent and you're raising Gen Z or Gen Alpha now, this book here has a lot of the lessons that our generation had to learn the hard way.
Yeah,
and it's very well done, very easy to read. Like,
send me the link. I'll put it in the description. If you don't send me the link, I'll forget. But send me the link. It's in the description.
Yeah, I'll send that over to you. No, I was just about to say, it's on Barnes and Noble. It's called Screens of the Ego. It's by my wife Jane Marie O'Reilly. Definitely check that out, guys. And it's a short book. It's about 150 pages. It's a series of short stories and philosophical reflections about what it's like to be a teenager or 20-something growing up in this fake and gay world, right? Where we're fucking bombarded by transgender propaganda.
On Audible.
Yeah, and
it's on Audible. Do you know how many
check it out. It's on Audible.
I have to talk to and be like, why is it not on Audible? I can't read.
Oh yeah.
I can only listen to books. I don't understand.
No, same. Honestly.
I don't know. I literally don't know what these. I don't know what these like letters mean. I don't.
Yeah.
Hieroglyphics. I don't. It's not.
Sanskrit.
Yeah, and just one more thing. I just want to show Defense Politics Asia as well. Check it out on YouTube. Wyatt does Asia. He does geopolitics and war mapping of the Ukraine war, and also a weekly podcast called The Open Mic, where you can just jump on and talk if you'd like. So yeah,
just bought your wife's book.
Oh hell yeah! Thanks, man.
Yeah, dude. Tell her to do the show. I'll fucking do a podcast.
Yeah, actually, for sure.
Yeah, follow up with me because I will. It goes in one ear out the other. I got another.
You have to yell at him.
You truly have to. Stoli understands. Like you have to yell at me, like flare. Like it's DEFCON 1. I'm like, all right, yeah. What are we doing? Where's the button? But yeah, for now we gotta wrap this one up.
Cool.
Archimedes, nice to meet you. Stoli, nice to meet you too.
Take care, gentlemen.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. Go in the description. Send me the link to her book and tell her to come on the show and let's do it. Till next time, Wyatt is gay. And yeah.
True.
Take care, everybody.